Hello guys, this is Brian Wentz of UB Fit, and today we're going to be going over 4 glute exercises you should be doing right now. So the first one is called a glute march or glute marches. What that looks like is you're going to be laying down. It's just like with the glute bridge, just like in a previous video, we're going to make sure we keep our hips tucked, and then we're going to come up into a glute bridge, making sure our hips are still tucked. And then now what we're going to do is just going to raise one up, hold for a second, control down, raise one up, hold for a second, control down. Making sure when you're doing this, when you bring that leg up, you don't want that hip dip. You're still keeping that up, kind of like you're doing a single leg glute bridge, but you're just alternating between them. What else I see happen sometimes is people, when they're on one foot, they might just raise that toe up, and they're going to feel that along the calf. Make sure your heel's still down when we're driving through that heel, so you really activate that glute, making sure yet again, hips up, hips tucked, right? We don't want to see that. We don't want to see that hyper extension where our lower back is taking over. We want to keep that hip tucked while we're going through this motion. So for the second exercise, it's called a hip check. What that looks like is we're going to be right in here, having our hand just slightly on. I'm not having my whole body against it. So my hand there for balance, and we're going to bring our leg up, and we're going to use our glute med to be able to drive our hip into it. We don't want to just like lean into it and have that knee against the wall. We're just driving that hip. So my knee's kind of off, my hand, especially when I'm here, my hand should be free, not against the wall necessarily, not putting a whole lot of weight against the wall. We're just trying to drive that in. And then when we're coming off now, we could have that there yet again for balance. Make sure that knee doesn't drop down, keep it up, and then back in and off, back in, hold for a second, and then come off. And then of course switch sides. So that's a hip check. It's really good for the glute meds. All right, for the third exercise, it's a floor hamstring curl. Now, there's 2 options for it, either with one of the sliders, or you could use a physio ball slash yoga ball. Now, when we think hamstring curls, usually it's a machine. The problem with that is we don't get proper glute activation, and we don't really see the hamstrings being used in that manner. So instead, we're going to be using the glutes with the hamstrings in this combined hip extension and knee flexion motion. So how this looks is, you're going to put the sliders on the floor. You're going to make sure you're going to put your heels in the center, otherwise they'll slip out under you. You're going to lay back, and when you're laying back, you're gonna tilt that hip, making sure you can't fit a hand through, tilt it, and then we're gonna come up. And I like keep my hands right here, just not as support, not pushing up, but just making sure my hips tilted, make sure my hips are up. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna straighten out those legs, keep the hips still off the ground, hips shouldn't be touching the floor, and then we're going to curl up. We'll feel an intense activation when we're curling in the hamstrings, making sure the glutes are, and the hips are still up, so the glutes are still active, and then curl, or straighten, and then we're gonna curl. Now, if that's a little bit too hard, because sometimes when people come and curl, we might get that arch in the back, and it might be a little bit too challenging. So what we can do instead is keep that hip tucked, and work on that eccentric, slow that down, and then put the hips down, and then curl, and then raise that hip up, tuck the hip, and then just straighten out, and focus on that eccentric. So that way you have a way to control that motion and progress through it. The other option is with a exercise ball, physio ball, yoga ball, whatever you want to call it. Now this way adds a little more proprioception. What that means is a little bit more instability. You're not as balanced. As well as it's not as much tension on the hamstrings or the glutes. So you're gonna put your feet on top of it, you're gonna lay back down, and then same idea, we're going to raise the hips, and then just curl in, make sure you keep those hips up, and then back down, and curl, and back. And make sure you keep those hips up, and hips tilted as well. We don't want that lower back arching. So when we lower back arches, now you see I'm a lot more unstable versus if I keep my hips tucked, well now I'm a lot better controlled. And that is the floor hamstring curls. All right, for the fourth exercise, it's going to be a banded hinge or banded deadlift. Now we went over a variation of this in one of our deadlift videos, except that was where the band was straight back, so it's just pushing you straight back, leg straight. This time, the anchor point is back and down, so it's gonna assist you not only pushing your hips back, but also down in a deadlift, not a squat. So what this looks like, you're gonna get in the band, you're gonna place it right about where your hip is. You're gonna step forward. Now, making sure if you step too far forward and then you go back, you're gonna be pulled back. So making sure you understand that you're far enough back where when we drive our hips back, we maintain tension in the band and making sure back's flat, knees right over the ankles, and then we squeeze our glutes coming up. And it's fine if you kind of have to lean forward a little bit at the top position. Just make sure your hips aren't back, your hips are locked out. And again, if we are too far back, too close to the anchor point, well then when we come back, well hey, now I just lost a lot of tension in that band. It's not really assisting in pushing my hips back. Once we get good enough, we can also add a kettlebell or a barbell and treat it like a banded deadlift instead of just a banded hinge. So we're gonna go down, back still nice and flat, and hips are back, and then come squeeze my glutes, right? Pushing the hips back, and then come squeeze my glutes. So this is a great way to help train for proper glute activation during your deadlifts. Even during your squats, a lot of times when people squat and they deadlift, those hips may tilt in, and then they lose activation, or it tilts up. And then we're feeling a lot in our lower back as well. So that was the banded hinge / banded deadlift for my top 4 glute exercises that you should be doing. All right guys, I hope you like this video. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you do. If you have any questions or comments, make sure to leave in the comment section down below. Make sure to subscribe, hit that bell button too so you get notified. We have more videos coming out, more about core, and of course if you have any suggestions, make sure to still leave that in the comment section down below. This has been Brian Wintz of UB Fits, and I hope you have a good day.